Going to be cool and crisp, to say the very least. We start tomorrow in the low 40s. How about low 30s, right around freezing by Thursday morning, Friday morning in the mid 30s, low 40s Saturday morning, and by Sunday morning back near, if not a little bit above average. So that average would be somewhere in those low to mid 40s. Past 6 hours, that dip in the jet stream has held temperatures on the cooler side, not just for Boston, but down towards Hartford and Philly, even getting closer to D.C., Chicago, Minneapolis, of course, up near the Great Lakes, where we've even seen a little wintry weather. Still on the milder side, but a little cooler farther to the south. I mean, these areas are slightly below average, and morning temperatures will be chilly. Pittsburgh starting the day tomorrow. 49, 48 in Cleveland, 43 in Indianapolis. We've got 45 in Buffalo, 41 for Detroit. And then again, the sub-freezing temperatures up near Green Bay. Marquette, low 20s for you. You are way below the freezing mark. Thursday morning, we stay there. Now Detroit, Chicago, you get in on those freezing temperatures. Same for Buffalo, Burlington, Boston. Pittsburgh, you're going to be close to freezing. Same for Cleveland, in the upper 40s for Washington, D.C. So even some of our mid-Atlantic cities start the day pretty cold. Northeast, your last freeze on average for Pittsburgh would come late April, so very much in line with where we are now. New York, usually it's early April that you see your average last freeze. Boston, again, early April for you. Washington, D.C., it's usually late March that we see our last freeze. Obviously, we're not getting that cold. Last year, last freeze came close to average in Pittsburgh, close to average in New York, Boston, and also D.C. D.C. maybe a week early, but really everybody was right in line with that average time of year. Winds are gusty today. We've got those gusts anywhere from, 20 to 30 miles an hour across parts of the Northeast through later today. And with that cold front, or rather tomorrow, with that cold front coming through later tomorrow into Thursday morning, you can see those temperatures are really dropping off. We've got, mid-30s by 10 o'clock, upper 20s by early Thursday morning. And then the time you're actually getting up, maybe making your way to work, 5 a.m. temperatures in the mid-20s. I'm sorry, the Brambleberry.
Graders with it.
A reminder as we get into the warmer months, never okay to leave a child or a pet in a car unattended. A Slidell couple was arrested after leaving their 5-month-old in their car while they ran into a store to do some quick shopping. Now, the car was running, the baby uninjured, but in Louisiana, it is against the law to leave any child younger than 10 alone in a vehicle for any amount of time. And of course, if the car is not running, we got to start thinking about that. How do kids get into cars, and if kids are left inside vehicles? A temperature tomorrow in Houston of 86 degrees after just 10 minutes inside that vehicle. It's 105, 120 after 30 minutes. So again, really have to think about the repercussions of even leaving a pet in the car just to run in a store and grab a prescription. It's going to get really hot in just a few minutes. And again, looking before we lock, we're also at that time of year where our schedules start to change, right? School is going to be wrapping up here soon. Maybe you're doing daycare drop-offs that you hadn't done before. Check the back seat before you leave that vehicle. You know, a lot of cars nowadays do beep, too. If you've opened that back seat and closed it before you started the car, they'll remind you to check it before you leave it. Orlando tomorrow, 84 after just 10 minutes, 103 inside a vehicle, 118 degrees after 30 minutes. So, again, dangerous, deadly heat in a short period of time now that we get these spring and, of course, summer temperatures that are on the way. Unfortunately, we see these hot car deaths continue, and the months obviously spiking into the ones that we're approaching. So the Junes, the July, the August, that's when we see most of our car deaths, but at least one each month on average of the year. So it can happen in these comfortable spring, even late winter temperatures. January and February each average one hot car death. You can have a high in the upper 60s, and inside that vehicle, it gets into the 90s. Child hot car deaths by temperature range. Again, a lot of these are these very hot days, the 80 to 90, 90 to 100 degree days. But 3% sub 70 degree temperatures, 70 to 79 degrees, 8% of our hot car deaths. So it doesn't have to be the hottest day again of the year to see these problems happen. Thursday, 64 million people above 80, most of that across the southern plains and the Gulf Coast and Florida. By Saturday, we see that creep northward. So now we've got 114 million people with temps above 80. Again, forgotten by caregiver continues to be the most common reason for a child hot car death, but a child playing in an unattended car, Mike, sometimes we don't think about that. You know, a car's left unlocked in the driveway, a child gets in, unable to get out, and the parents don't know where they are. Underground. We're going to go in depth on a new study that rates 18 beaches. The weather looks absolutely beautiful, but in the water, that's where the danger will be. Miami Beach through the rest of the week. Expect temperatures in the low 80s, maybe a few extra clouds into Saturday, but still plenty of sunshine. Now, tomorrow, we start things off in South Florida with a burn time of 10 minutes in Miami. Got to have that sunscreen on. Making our way up to the north, more in the way of sunscreen necessity. Vero Beach, Florida, 79 degrees, mostly sunny skies. Burn time also 10 minutes. Let's continue up 95. Daytona Beach, Florida, very similar forecast. Closing in on 80, a burn time of 10 minutes with nothing but sun. So expect a lot of that blue sky overhead as you sit out on the beach, or maybe we're going to walk around always perusing the T-shirt shops. They've got some funny ones. Pensacola, sunshine Wednesday, sunshine Thursday, few extra clouds Friday and Saturday. We keep those temps right around 80 degrees each and every day. So again, this is going to be another one of those spots where the sunscreen is an absolute necessity. Pensacola, 10-minute burn time. Water temperatures, they're going to start to warm up. So again, you're going to start to want to get in the water, but got to watch those flags. I'd swim at the guarded beaches. Panama City, still a little cool in the water, 68 your water temperature. But I know some of you are like, whatever, I can handle it. Obviously, you get into West Florida, out over the Gulf, temperatures in the upper 70s in this part of the Gulf. So very, very mild in Clearwater, Mike.
All right, Alex, thank you for that. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Bettis. Dr. Rick Knapp is going to join us here in just a second. Now, some places where you're the complete opposite, Olivia, where you're wet today, a little bit on the cooler side, and so maybe Mother Nature is doing all the washing for you.
Yeah, and, you know, it's not a ton of rain, so it might just be more of like kind of that pesky, like the windshield wipers are like, as opposed to like,
you keep changing the intermittent. You're
right.
like, do I need it on higher, lower? Like,
do
I just can't get it right.
Yeah, it's just one of those days where you just feel like there's not a speed at which you can capture these raindrops. So it's a little frustrating.
100%. All right, let's show you what's going on in Sandusky.
Code, you know, surveyors to do better. So they've really stepped it up in the aftermath of all these storms.
Yeah, and you mentioned the barrage of hurricanes the state has experienced in recent years, but also, you know, they updated their building codes to get consistent with the International Building Code, and that's important because, you know, building materials that are used, building practices changed. You have to keep up with the times, and like you mentioned, you know, train folks who are doing the work to strengthen homes so that it's done correctly, and all of this lessens the vulnerability of buildings to wind. Now, this report is all about wind. You know, we've got the vulnerability to surge and rain-induced flooding and all that, but when it comes to wind, you know, a state like Louisiana is trending safer because they are raising the expectations of how strong their buildings need to be by law.
It seems like they've done better in recent years, and they've had several hits. But you would have thought that after Katrina in particular, that this would have been priority number one, and it hasn't necessarily been.
No, it hasn't. But, you know, when you compare Louisiana to some other states, you get even more head-scratching situations where a state like North Carolina that recently has passed legislation that they're not going to update their building codes for at least the next 6 or 7 years. So, you know, there are states that are obviously very vulnerable and have taken some recent hits that are taking some steps backwards. So there are competing forces. There's a lot of arguments between you know, disaster safety advocates and builders about what this will actually cost. What does this mean financially for the state? So it often comes down to, at the state level, legislative debates about money.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at Louisiana sandwiched between a bunch of states with much poorer scores. So it's not necessarily about your geographic location. It's all about what you're doing within the state.
Isn't that interesting? And during the show today, we're going to compare states that are like right next to one another and have very similar vulnerabilities, but are you know, attacking this issue very, very differently. Texas and Louisiana, very different. Texas has much weaker building codes statewide. We're going to compare Florida and Alabama with statewide building codes in Alabama, a lot weaker than in Florida. But on the East Coast, if you compare states like Virginia and New York, they're very different. Virginia is now at the top of the list. You know, and New York has strong building codes. New York's problem is they're not licensing their contractors. So there's so many pieces to this puzzle.
What's interesting about Virginia, because they rank at the very top of this list, right? Their vulnerability doesn't seem to be quite that other states. I mean, you would assume then that like a Florida or a Texas or Gulf Coast state is much more vulnerable than a Virginia.
Yeah, you would think that, you know, the Gulf Coast states, when you look at states like Virginia and states farther north that are doing reasonably well on this report, they realize that it only takes one, right? And then everybody's financial situation is much worse after a big hurricane hit when you haven't prepared ahead of time. But this, again, it's about three different components. It's the strength of the building codes, the training, and the knowledge to do the work. Some states are doing well in other areas. Some states not so much, but it's for different reasons. But I think it all starts with having strong building codes, the laws, the minimum legal requirement for how strong your buildings need to be. That's the first step to being more resilient.
Right. It feels like those other two things, those support that. Obviously, if you've got the strong building codes, but you don't necessarily have the people who uphold them understanding it, then you've got the problem.
Right, and that's why Texas and Alabama are so far down the list, because they don't have strong statewide building codes, and they have next to nothing in terms of code enforcement from the state level. And as we talked to Ann Cope a little bit ago, leaving it to local communities to do this. But a lot of times, either
that to me seems like a recipe for disaster. And we think about what would the insurance claims be after a major event. It could be catastrophic for some states.
Yep. And again, Florida shows us that building codes work. Ian would have been $3 billion more expensive if not for the strong building codes in that state.
We're going to talk more about our...
Welcome in, everyone. Glad you could join us. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, as always, with our expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. Some really interesting findings from this. We're breaking it down hour by hour, but some states doing really well. Others have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and people might be wondering, why do I care about building codes? The issue is, and where this report really shines in terms of being valuable, is it shows that not every state is the same, not every locality is the same, and I think a lot of us tend to assume that all of our homes are built to a really high standard, and those standards are not as strong in your community as you might first think.
And you don't realize that until a hurricane comes calling, right? So we're going to break this down for you coming up here on Weather Underground. Hope you can stick around for that. Dr. Knabb's got some great insight. In the meantime, a little cloudy, a little dreary for you, a little rainy in the Midwest.
Yeah, we take you to Chicago, where there's a day out there in eastern Massachusetts. Mornings are also going to be on the cold side. Wednesday morning, pretty close to average, but Thursday and Friday, low to mid-30s to start the day. We've got 40 on the thermometer Saturday morning, back to the mid-40s by Sunday. So at least in the short term, temperatures are going to be dropping off. Over the last 6 hours, of course, we've got the wet weather focused around the Great Lakes, but the cool extends into parts of the Northeast. So it's still chilly here, and even farther to the south, parts of the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, you're a little bit below average. Tomorrow morning temperatures, a lot of 30s and 40s out there regionally. 41 for Detroit, 38 in Chicago, 30 in Green Bay, mid-40s for Buffalo and Burlington, but low 40s over in Boston. New York City, you start the day close to 50 degrees. Thursday morning, now we really see that cool down in the wake of the front. A lot more 30s out there, including Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Boston, Buffalo. New York are going to be close. I think we bottom out right around 40 degrees. So some spots, obviously, around the city will be dropping into the 30s. 46 to start your Thursday in Washington, D.C. And across the Northeast, on average, our last freeze would come for Pittsburgh right around this time of year, late April, early April for New York, for Boston, late March for D.C. Last year, we fell pretty in line. I think D.C. was the one spot that came a full week early, but everybody else within a few days of that average last freeze date. We look at the winds. They will be gusty tomorrow late in the day, 20 to 30 miles an hour across the region. So that means wind chill comes back into play. Boston, late Wednesday into Thursday. Look at these wind chill values. By late in the day Wednesday, we're in the mid and low 30s, into the 20s by the early morning hours. So you're waking up on Thursday morning and you're going, what the heck happened? Where am I?
You really...
Reminder as we get into the warmer months, it's never okay to leave a child or a pet in a car unattended. A Slidell couple was arrested after leaving their 5-month-old in the car while they ran into a store to do some shopping. Now, the car was running, the baby uninjured, but in Louisiana, it's against the law to leave any child younger than 10 alone in a vehicle for any amount of time. And again, as temperatures warm up, these cars get dangerous, deadly hot in a matter of minutes. Our scorching car scale illustrates that. In Houston tomorrow, a high of 86. Inside a vehicle, though, temperatures in the low to mid triple digits. 105 after 10 minutes, 120 after 30 minutes. So again, time gets away from us. You know, we run into a store just to pick something up. You get distracted, the lines get long, and a 5-minute trip turns into a 20-minute trip. And that's when temperatures are going to get dangerous and deadly. So it's imperative you look before you lock. You never leave children in the car, and you never leave your pets in the car. If you're going to be out running errands, leave them at home. Orlando tomorrow, 84 degrees after 10 minutes inside a vehicle, 103. 118 degrees after 30 minutes. So very, very dangerous, very, very hot inside those vehicles. And again, it's that time of year too, where on a much lower level, we got to think about what we're storing in the car. You know, the stuff you got away with during the winter months, you know, things like, you know, the chapstick, you can't be leaving those in the car, the kids' crayons in the back seat, because that's going to make quite a mess. Now, child hot car deaths, obviously the most imperative point of this. These average, or we on average get one of these every month. So it doesn't have to be the warm months. Obviously, it is our summer months, the July and August, that lead the way on average with most of our hot car deaths. But we've seen hot car deaths in January. We've seen them in November and December. By temperature range, again, most of these hot car deaths coming with temperatures between 80 and 100 degrees. But, Mike, as low as 70 degrees or below, those temperatures inside a vehicle can get into the 80s and 90s. And again, it's just too much for a child. Well, coming up on Weather Underground, we're going to go in depth on a new study that rates.
But a risk of rip current. See those waves moving right at the shoreline? That's the onshore flow that makes the rip current risk go up today.
Absolutely. So in the wake of this, again, the beautiful weather, but we've got a weather setup that promotes really, really dangerous conditions in water. And when we've got a lot of people also from out of town who may, you know, you have that desire to get in the water, but it could be a real bad idea.
Yeah, so what I want to talk about is how will the weather evolve and where...
It's an unfortunate combo, but one you need to know about. And again, it's that really ideal weather that we've got in Miami Beach. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, temperatures right around 80 degrees, morning lows in the 70s. So again, you'll be tempted to get in the water, but you got to listen to those flags, those lifeguards who are out there to keep you safe. And you got to put sunscreen on. Burn time 10 minutes tomorrow in Miami. Same for Vero Beach, where we've got just a few clouds overhead. You know, the ones that you get to like pick the shapes out of. Temps in the upper 70s. So again, very comfortable to be out on the beach. Daytona Beach, very similar to Vero Beach. Burn time of 10 minutes with nothing but sunshine expected. So the hat, the sunglasses, you know, the t-shirt breaks, that's what you want. And again, don't forget to reapply. Pensacola, we've got sunshine Wednesday, sunshine Thursday, maybe a few extra clouds, but still dry and bright Friday and Saturday, with those temperatures holding in the upper 70s and low 80s for highs. Along the panhandle of Florida, we've got water temperatures that are going to be a little cooler, but still the burn time of 10 minutes. Expect water temperatures in the upper 60s in a place like Panama City Beach, 69 degrees there. Air temperatures 76. But again, burn time 10 minutes. Are you catching the theme here in Florida? Lots of sunshine tomorrow. Clearwater, there you might really want to get in the water. Water temperatures in the upper 70s there off the coast of West Florida. Air temperatures right around 80 degrees. We'll be right back. Let's listen here with Mike Bettis, Dr. Nab in the house as well. Nothing quite like that, but we do kind of have an iffy day across parts of the Great Lakes.
We do. Wet. The complete opposite
that
weekend.
bad, right,
It's not awful,
No.
but we do have in places some chances for some rain. We got some wind today here, and so like
and it's a little chilly.
You
might find some goosebumps.
Like a place like Cleveland or Buffalo today. Probably not an ideal April day for you.
No,
it happens.
It's another worse though. It's not snowing.
It's not snowing. It can do that from time to time, right? So count your blessings. It's just excuse me, rain day. All right, to Sandusky, Ohio.
The disparities between the states. You know, Louisiana doing really well. Some of its neighbors, and I mean, neighbor within sharing state lines, not doing nearly as well.
Yeah, so it's really interesting when you look at do in a little while. But we'll talk about Florida and Alabama here in a couple minutes. But look at how different nearby states rank. You would think that along the Gulf Coast and the Southeast, that every state would be first in line compared to the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast to have the strongest building codes. What we're talking about is, you know, minimum legal requirements.
In what ways is Florida in particular really outpacing other states?
Well, I think it is, bottom line, you know, along with other states like Virginia and New Jersey and recently Louisiana, keeping up with the latest building codes. So they're adopting and updating their building codes routinely because building materials change their building code. They did it last year. And now that's not to say there aren't some battles going on in Florida. We talked recently about how, you know, some of the builders are against the strengthening of the building codes. They want to revert. So there's still battles going on. But I think, you know, keeping that building code really, really strong is what's keeping Florida ahead. And they're doing a pretty good job of licensing contractors. Florida is the only state that has a perfect square roof. So knowing in Florida that it's going to get done right, that expectation has
Can
gone
I ask you
way
a
up.
question about Florida, though? They have some of the highest insurance rates in the country still,
Yeah.
even though they're doing things right. What would it be like in Florida if they didn't have the building codes that they have now? What would people be paying in insurance?
Oh, gosh.
Would you even be insurable in Florida?
Well, that's a struggle enough as it is. So if we didn't have the strong building codes, I think the long-term viability of living in Florida would be very much in question. But, and roof work getting done that isn't needed, so they've put some laws in place now, and that's part of the reason why their score is so high for licensing contractors now. Now they do need to keep educating the people who enforce the building codes, and they need to keep fighting back against the opposition so that we don't lose ground. But Florida, is a model for other states. And a very nearby state is Alabama that has been making improvements, but the key is in Alabama, you still don't have a statewide building code.
Is
you
that
just
the
don't
main
have
reason
it.
for the lower
Yes.
scores?
Yes.
And I mean, we're
Yes.
talking very low.
Yes, and that is the main thing that needs to happen in Alabama, is therefore to be a statewide minimum legal requirement for how homes need to be built. And you can't enforce. The coastal communities have done exceptionally well. There are thousands of fortified homes in Mobile and Baldwin counties that fared very well. This all happened kind of after Ivan and Katrina. And then a lot of these homes on the Alabama coast did very well in Sally, just like a lot of the homes in Ian did very well in Florida because of the strong building code. So it's not like the whole state of Alabama is behind. But the coastal communities are setting the standard. Alabama, I know you're thinking, well, those are the coastal counties. They're the only ones that need it. No, hurricanes are an inland event, too.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to be looking at more state-by-state regionally comparisons coming up here on Weather Underground. And, of course, don't forget, our coverage continues on the Weather Channel. Storm Center, they pick up right after us, beginning at 5 o'clock Eastern.
On Weather Underground, I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, of course, with our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. We've got a lot to break down in this report. Interesting how states that really share state lines can score so differently. And you're going to talk about the whys and what needs to be done in some of these areas.
Yeah, and the key here is that a lot of us tend to just assume that all of our homes are built to a really high standard. But depending upon what state you live in and even what city you live in a given state, the standards that the law requires might not be as strong as you think. And we want to be empowered with this information so that we can do everything we can to keep our homes and our families safe.
All right, Dr. Knabb is going to help us break it down state by state coming up, so you want to stay tuned for that. We're also going to talk to the people behind the report, so another little bit of insight for you. But in the meantime, let's talk about today's present weather, including...
Come here. I'm going to fix this right here.
Yeah, and there's a little bit right here.
Thank you, Dr. Knabb. Thank you, Dr. Knabb.
But there's a lot of haze and stuff in the way.
You guys
that
are
filters
crazy.
The blue.
That's all gray.
And nothing but blue, but it's cold. Temperatures are in the upper 50s, so it's definitely crisp, a jacket on day, even though you've got the sunshine. Morning temperatures, they're going to definitely require jackets here in the coming days. Thursday morning temperatures, 33. That's 10 degrees below average. 35 early Friday. We're back to the low, even upper 40s over the weekend. So temperatures moderate as we move into Saturday and especially Sunday. Over the last 6 hours, there's our dip in the jet stream, of course, keeping things especially cool across the Great Lakes, the Northeast, even getting down into a little bit of the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Ohio, Tennessee Valley. You guys have also been a little crisper today, slightly below average. Not the warmest day, a little cooler out there, even in places like Atlanta. Tomorrow morning, though, look at these temperatures. We've got 40s for many to start the day, 50s in New York and D.C., the 30s locked back into Chicago and Green Bay. But by Thursday morning, now we're sharing the wealth. A lot of 30s and a lot of low 30s out there. A Buffalo, a Detroit, a Chicago, a Green Bay. Burlington's in the upper 20s, low 30s in Boston, upper 30s in Pittsburgh. So a lot of shivers to start your Thursday. And you're going, come on, it's late April. I'm ready to put the coats away. The good news is, on average, this would be about our last freeze for a place like Pittsburgh. Last year, you had it on the 25th. So, again, very close to where we are now. New York, on average, your last freeze in early April. Same for Boston. Last year, pretty much in line. And in D.C., it's usually late March that we see our last freeze. A week early last year. But again, very close to average is what we had last year. And I'm not expecting freezing temperatures in D.C. Winds will be gusty along with this front. So as this front moves in, winds anywhere from 15 to 20, even 30 miles an hour in spots. So Boston, you're actually going to be talking about a wind chill. Look at the wind chill values by midnight Wednesday into Thursday, right at freezing in the 20s Thursday morning. Mike?
Nashville we go.
Get into the warmer months. Never okay to leave a child or a pet in a car unattended. A Slidell couple was arrested after leaving their 5-month-old car or their 5-month-old in the car while they ran into a store to do some shopping. Now, the car was running. The baby was uninjured. But in Louisiana, it's against the law to leave any child younger than 10 alone in a vehicle for any amount of time. And that brings us to our scorching car scale, especially here during the summer months, a reminder of just how hot, how deadly it gets inside a vehicle after just a few minutes. Houston, a high of 86 tomorrow, but inside a vehicle after 10 minutes, 105 degrees. After 30 minutes, 120 degrees. So very, very hot. That's why we say even pets, you got to leave them at home. If you're going to be running into a store, I know it's something like, oh, it's just 5 to 10 minutes, but those temperatures can get so dangerous in such a short period of time. Look at Orlando, a high of 84 tomorrow, but after 10 minutes, temperatures warm inside that vehicle, almost 20 degrees. 30 minutes, 118 degrees inside that car. And so we've got to look before we lock. Again, we've got to leave kids and pets at home if we are going to be, running in, doing errands and leaving these cars. On average per month, of course, most of our hot car deaths with children are during the summer months, June, July, August. Those are by far the farthest. But we average 1 death per month. So you can see it during the winter months. You can see it in the fall. You can see it in the early spring, those months that are known for cold, if not comfortable temperatures, or comfortable, if not cold temperatures. Look at these temperatures. 3% of child hot car deaths come with a high temperature below 70 degrees, 8% 70 to 79 degrees. So again, those days that don't feel dangerous can very much be so. Of course, 80 to about 100 degrees, that's where most of our hot car deaths fall. This week, temperatures warming up, especially into the weekend. By Saturday, 114 million people, highs above 80 degrees. And again, when we look at the reasoning for why children are left in these hot cars or get into hot cars, yes, most of them are forgotten by caregivers. That's about half of all instances, but a quarter of the instances are because a child is playing in an unattended vehicle. They get themselves trapped in the vehicle, Mike. The parents don't know where they are, and when they find them, it's too late.
So important.
Coming up on Weather Underground, we're going in depth on a new study that rates is going to make you want to.
Yeah, the weather's not dangerous. There's not going to be any rain. There's not going to be any storms. But you saw those waves crashing onto the beach. That's because we have a strong onshore flow. And over the next few days, where in Florida you get that onshore flow and where the rip current risk is highest is going to change. So I want to help people through this period. And not
real good. We look at Miami Beach, for example. Temperatures right around 80, nothing but sunshine for the rest of the week. Weekend brings a few extra clouds, but it's still dry. It's still really comfortable. So sunscreen is a must. It's going to be key. Tomorrow in Miami with that temperature around 80 degrees with all that sunshine, you got a burn time of 10 minutes. And as we make our way up the coast, you're going to see that's something that's repeated in our Florida forecast. Vero Beach near 80, burn time of 10 minutes, even though you get a few clouds intermittently to give you a break in that sun. Daytona Beach, probably less clouds. I think we're going to see a lot of blue sky overhead. And once again, burn time 10 minutes. That onshore flow, though, continues. So as Dr. Knabb mentioned, rip current danger will be higher. Pensacola, sunshine Wednesday, few clouds Thursday, a little bit more cloud cover Friday. Saturday, I think a cloudy, windy day. So that's going to be the toughest day at the beach when we talk about the Florida Panhandle. But tomorrow looking really good. 10-minute burn time like some of our other spots. 78 degrees with water temperatures up along the Florida Panhandle into the 60s. You can see 69 around Panama City. So not super cold, not super warm either. You may be less tempted to get in that water, especially with those highs only in the upper 70s. Clearwater, you'll be seeing highs around 80. Burn time of 10 minutes now. Water temperatures there in the Gulf much warmer. We're in the upper 70s at that point, or at that location. So obviously a little bit more tempting to get in the water. But again, key for Florida is check the flags, listen to the lifeguards, and of course, apply and reapply the sunscreen. Nothing worse than getting back from your beach vacation with skin the color of my dress. And everyone in the office just looks at you like, oh, are you okay? And like, I don't know, aloe's sticky. Be careful out there. We'll be right back.